Hey, welcome everybody to another Tuesday Live where we are going to be diving today into terms, how we're buying on terms, how we are selling on terms. Got my beautiful wife, Jen,
Hello,
in the
hello.
house.
I'm actually
And
in the
today we're going to bring
office
some, yeah, we're in the office today. We're not even in the house, but today we're going to go over some pretty cool stuff. So I'm excited. Definitely make sure if you are already not liking and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Creative Finance Playbook, please go do that because there's some extra stuff that goes on there that you guys definitely want to see. We drop some really cool stuff there. A lot of information. Same thing with our Facebook page and our group, Creative Finance Playbook with Joe and Jen. It's a group. This is where we share all of our deals in creativefinanceplaybook.com. So if you want to see our deals, find out more information about this kind of stuff, it's all right on there. So definitely go check that out. And today we are going to talk about terms. So when we're doing creative finance deals, this is the part where I love terms, is because we are controlling the pen, working with the seller in their situation, right? So I have a situation and we like to go over a lot of current things, deals that I'm currently working on, sellers that we're talking to. How do I address these deals when they come across my way, right? And then how do we make these work? So the one thing is, and I'm literally going through the calculator right now. I'm gonna give you guys at least a sneak peek at what it looks like. But this thing is gonna be awesome because what this is going to do for everybody, it's the calculator, okay? This is gonna be able to help you calculate your deals and find out if this is a good deal quickly or not. Because you're gonna have a seller that's gonna tell you yes. So part of when you're doing this and you're negotiating with sellers, first thing you got to do when you're working terms is you got to know what a win looks like. Right? What's the difference of a winning deal or not? So you have to go into it. What am I looking for out of a deal? Is it a certain cash flow? Is it a certain cost of entry? Right? So I only have $5,000 to use. So what kind of deal can I get for $5,000 or 10 grand or whatever your number is, right? And then once you have a property, what's your game plan with it? So a lot of times I have challenges where I see is a lot of folks don't know what a win looks like. So we created this calculator that you should be able to put in some information, all the questions that are right on our script. It's going to give you all the information you're going to need to figure out within under 5 minutes if this is a good deal, a great deal, or a complete loser deal. Okay. So that's the benefit of having this. So the tools are going to be helpful. We're going to be having it live, I would imagine, next week. So it's going to be pretty awesome. So the one thing, if you want to learn more about that, definitely reach out to Jen. So the thing is where we're looking at is we're looking for a certain thing when we buy, right? They're going to be in areas that we like. Now we get leads in all 50 states. We have leads from wholesalers. I get leads from realtors. I get leads from our marketing that we pay for. So we get leads all over the country. And obviously I would love to own real estate in every single state, but at this point, holy cow, it gets to be a little overwhelming. So some of these deals that we decide, we assign to other investors. There's some of these term deals that we could also keep in house. There's some of these deals we could assign to a homeowner, somebody who wants to buy a house, right? So we have a lot of things that we could do with terms. But what does it mean when I'm looking for a deal for Joe and Jen? What's a win to us? I'm looking for a property that's usually turnkey or pretty close to it. Most of these are beautiful houses in beautiful neighborhoods, or at least they're a nice house in a nice neighborhood. There are even some, houses that are in, some of the rougher neighborhoods too, because it works everywhere. This is the point. That if I could get into a property with very little to no money down. So what does that mean? Most of the time we buy with no money down. And this is what we teach. Really, when it's down payments, cost of entry is what kills a deal for us, right? And too high of a cost of entry will ruin a deal. Seller wants half down, that's too much. Doesn't make sense to do that. It doesn't make sense to go to a bank and finance full price at today's interest rates when I'm trying to use this as an investment property. That doesn't make sense either. So if we could come to terms that works for everybody, those are the ones we buy. So what does that look like to us? My biggest thing for me is cost of entry onto a deal. I want that to be as low as possible. No money down or very little money down. Because when you buy on terms, guys, you're going to be the one paying both sides of the closing costs. You can't expect your seller to sell you a house and come up to the closing table and say, okay, fine, you're buying my house with no money down. And then you think they're going to show up with $3,000 in closing costs to cover their half, or $2,000, or whatever the dollar amount is. It's not going to happen. Your chance of making that deal go down significantly. So chances are you're going to have to come up with closing costs. Now, if you don't have the money to do that, you have a few options. You could borrow it from somebody, or if you could just team up with somebody and partner up with somebody on that kind of deal and get some money, right? There's lots of people, if it's a good deal, they're going to want that deal from you. And that's what we've learned. So don't let a good deal go by your fingertips because you don't have the resources to close it. Depends on where you live and the dollar amounts of houses that you're going to be buying. You know, there's some house I looked at today that was a $37,000 house in Texas. And then I've got a $1.2 million property I'm looking at here in Florida. So closing costs are certainly going to vary. And then in some circumstances, in some states or cities, and I know Maryland is one of the states where their transfer tax like almost 5%, which is really, really high. So when you're going into a deal and it's a $300,000 house, you're looking at a significantly high transfer tax, plus all the attorney fees, appraisals, and all the other things. You could be looking at 20 grand pretty quick, right? So sometimes in those circumstances, I really like to do the lease purchase, where I'm going to get into that house with not even having to close on it, but I'm controlling it with just the contract, right? And then I could put in a tenant buyer and do whatever I want. So that's why in those circumstances, I really like it. Unless there's a tremendous upside, then I could see myself closing the house. But in states like that, I don't love that, right? So that makes it very hostile. In some of those circumstances, the seller and buyer split those closing costs. But you can't expect your seller to come up with 10 grand, it won't happen. So just to cover closing costs. So that's going to vary, but I want cost of entry to be really low. So we always negotiate that. Especially if we're paying this kind of price, we're buying it as is, and all these other factors that make that big difference. But the thing is, I want to buy cash flowing properties that are assets that we control for a considerably long time is our goal. They have to cash flow for us. Now, there are some where maybe we got a tremendous free equity. So, Jen, what is free equity? And all these people are probably like, well, what does that even mean? So a seller sells us their house for $290, and we find a tenant buyer who wants to buy it for $350. Right? We just got $60,000 of free equity in that deal. So this is where, in those circumstances, am I getting that kind of equity? Well, then maybe my cash flow doesn't need to be as high as when I plan on keeping a long time if I have terms of cashing out sooner. So you hear me say cashing it out. Your strategy might be different than ours, and that's okay. The strategy that we found to work the best for us is working with folks who want to rent the house and then they're going to be able to buy it short time down the road. So yes, that is a lease purchase. It's a rent out, whatever you want to call it. But this is exactly what we're dealing with their future homeowners. And so our goal is at one point, they do get us cashed out. Now, Jen could say for certain, we don't push them through it, but we also don't kick them out. So if they don't reach their cash out by the term, we just revisit the terms and renew an agreement, move forward, right? And we don't ever kick them out unless they don't pay. That's the only reason why you'd want to do that. If not, I tell them you could stay there and rent and paint the kids' bedrooms and do all the stuff you like to do. And we have some right now who a house that Jen and I bought 15 years ago. We have our third tenant buyer in there. And our third tenant buyer just sent you a bunch of pictures. What did they redo? Do you remember?
She was redoing like the attic, something in the basement. And I actually just got a text yesterday saying that she was having an issue with her furnace. She just wanted to know if there was a warranty on it. I said there's not, but have the person check X, Y, or Z. But regardless, like she knows that cost isn't on us. That will be on her to repair it. But it was a good quick fix. So.
So once again, that's the benefit of it is, when the furnace has an issue, the tenant buyer is going to put a new one in there. Although I will say that what we did is they don't let somebody really charge you high. We have a guy who could do it very inexpensively.
Right. Trying to guide them so that they can get the path to home ownership, because it can be kind of scary out there. And, if you have something like that go, it's a big expense. So we always do try to guide them a bit.
Right. And there's been times where if they have an issue, what have we done?
Christmas time, we've gifted them a new hot water tank, but they've been
Well,
paying on time, yada, yada.
it's happened 2 years in a row now, hasn't it?
I don't remember at this point, but I mean, you don't have to at the end of the day, but if they're great people and, you know, you want to do the right thing. But it
Right.
doesn't eat into your monthly cash flow usually because they're taking care of everything.
So, correction, the lady had her furnace go. She's been in the house for a while. She says, hey, the furnace goes, is it under warranty? If not, she's gonna go call her guy. Right, and we just said, don't pay too much before you do. Check with our guy too, because he'll save you a bundle, because he's our contractor and does a lot of work for us. So either way, she knows that she's gonna be handling that. So this is the benefit of why we love rent to own, because that could be a $2,000-3,000 furnace that we don't have to pay for, that all the landlords would have. And when she decides that she wants to do the bathroom wasn't, it was just slightly dated. It wasn't bad, but they went out and, I mean, it wasn't like, yay, I'm gonna go shower there and bathroom every day, but it was still nice enough. It was plenty fine. But she wanted to redo it all. Why are you laughing so hard? I'm trying to just being all quiet about it. No, but either way, this is the thing, is these folks, they get into these properties and they absolutely love it. So we buy on terms, but we also sell our properties on terms too. And this is where I'm going with this. And this is where we've learned from other folks in the game, in the real estate investing world, who've been doing it way longer than us. So we've been landlords, and I hate receiving the calls, because now we'd be stuck having to call our guy to go over there and replace the furnace and having to go pay for that. And these kind of buyers are planning on buying this house. So this is something that they're investing back into their own property. And these are great people. They love the property. They're taking excellent care of it. So I'm thrilled that if somebody does buy it out, somebody like that who really cares about the house, it's good to see that. So when we were buying the houses on terms, we did not buy that one on terms, by the way. We bought that in 2008, and we did a burr on that thing back when we didn't even know any better. We were just wiling out. But the deal was so darn good. We bought the house for $47,000, guys, and we were selling it for $190 for a tenant buyer. So once again, the deals were red hot. Deals were all over the place. That's why we bought some for in the 30. Like, do you remember Conrad Drive? We bought that for $36,000. It was an amazing deal. So will the prices go back down that low during this recession? I don't think so, but nobody knows for sure. But there will be good deals out there, guys. And this is the whole point. Now, I found those on the MLS in upstate New York. Right. Those weren't any secret sourcing that I did there. They were just when it turned from a buyer's market to a seller's market, deals were just plentiful. 2008, 2009, when there wasn't a lot of folks getting out of it, or they were getting crushed by the recession. And it really didn't start hitting people until 2009, 10, and 11. That's when a lot of the real pain started happening for a lot of these folks. So we hear about 2008, but it wasn't in 08. That's when the lights turned off, but the pain didn't start happening for the next handful of years. So that's kind of what happened last summer. Predicting that this year and next, it's going to do the same exact thing. It's going to continue to go down. So if that's the case, and we continue to see that, there's going to be these opportunities. Now, some of these opportunities right now, some of our very best deals that we're seeming to find are folks who relatively bought their house within the last few years, right? And they want to sell for a handful of reasons. You couldn't believe all of the reasons why. But we have really gotten great luck with somebody who just bought a house. They have very little to no equity. So our leads look a lot different than everybody else's leads. I don't need the leads with the big equity. I don't need the free and clear properties. That's not what I'm really looking for. I'm looking for the opposite. I'm looking for somebody who's got short, small equity. And those are my favorite deals. So somebody who recently just bought a house in the last year or 2 years, especially if they've used a VA loan or they put no money down, right? They finance even closing costs on these things. And then 9 months later, they want to sell because they don't like the new house. They don't like the area. They got a relocation. They got divorced. And I have many situations right now that I talked to today, just talking directly to a realtor on market. Gentleman bought this house over the summer. He owes 164 on it, and they got it listed right now for 169 with a realtor. It's turnkey. It's absolutely beautiful. It needs nothing. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in Michigan, about 1,200 square feet. I asked the realtor after going through the realtor script if they'd be open to terms, and he was like, yes, they would. They'd be open to seller financing. Great. We already have a deal. He told me what the payment was, the interest rate. He said this seller is ready to rock and roll. We're in. So now it's literally just now putting this deal on paper and getting everybody to approve it. He's already picked out his next house. He's ready to move. So in that situation, it's a great deal for me because I could get into a cash flowing asset with really just a couple of grand out of pocket. The seller has no equity, and I have to pay a small realtor commission, which I'm going to negotiate because the house has been on the market for 100 and I think like 13 days. So it's been on there for a while, right? They can't figure out a way to sell it, and they can't drop the house any lower. So they're kind of in that crossroads. So if you find these situations right now, guys, this is the benefit of this market kind of changing the way it recently just did, is we're having so many of our inbound leads. And I'll be honest with you, it changed quite a bit recently. A lot of our inbound leads a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, these were people who wanted to sell their house off market. Now, a majority of our, I would say close to half of our inbound leads is somebody who has a house listed on the market with a realtor. And it's not selling. And now they're reaching out to us. Because if you think of the landscape just changed recently, and the carpet got swept out from underneath the feet of a lot of sellers, where before they would never get to people like us, because if they're going to sell it on market, they would list it on the market and it would usually sell opening weekend because interest rates were 3% and it sold for 20 grand over asking. We all heard the story a million times, right? And the realtors would put the win on there. Sold another house, high five to my sellers for getting 30 grand over asking, right? And that's what would happen. So we never got to those people. Because if I'm going to sell my house, I'm going to put it on the market and it's just going to sell. But now these people, we're still getting the other leads of people who don't want to sell on market. But a lot of our incoming leads now, a majority of them are people who have houses on the market for sale and they're not selling with a realtor. So how am I addressing these people, right? Because what do you think they're going to want? You got to understand the numbers game, guys. They're all going to want a cash sell, obviously. And we just got to make sure that we understand that we do pay cash for properties when the time is right, right? When that house is a junker and needs some work. So how are we negotiating these terms? And we're offering a good price for these houses. I don't have to give them a lowball offer. And I tell them your house is too nice for a lowball cash offer. It doesn't work here. But where I could stretch and get to your price is by doing these things, right? And just like the old car business, you go over the features and benefits, right? So what's the features and benefits of working with all of you guys? Right? We could close whenever you want. I get paid top dollar, right? I don't have to give you a low cash offer. I cover the commission and fees, or at least the closing costs, right? But if there's a realtor involved, then you got to work out some type of commission, get that realtor paid. So, and the ease of doing business. And this is a factor that they're going to understand. And it's not going to work for everybody. But in our situation, talking to the right folks, sometimes you hear no, sometimes you're like, hell yeah, this worked great for us. So once you have this deal locked up, now it's just talking to that realtor and putting it on paper. For me, I love to get on a 3-way call with the seller and the realtor, introduce myself, explain to them who I am. Just my quick, brief, investor bio. My name is Joe. My wife is Jenn, and we buy houses. And we both loved your house, so I'm glad this is working out. Now I know that you guys mentioned you're open to terms, and I get into the 4 pillars, which we've already talked about, right? The price of the house, money down, the monthly payment we're going to be taking over, and then I get into the term length. And I do that really easily. The term length, everybody always gets worried about. I just say, I'm going to pay on this until I get it cashed out. I just don't know when that exactly is going to be. And until then, I take care of everything. Move on to the next thing, right? Hey, by the way, John, because I'm covering all the closing costs and fees, there's no money to be had down because there's no equity. So I don't even have to get into that very much. And sometimes they might want 2 or 3 grand. What do you do? It's not somebody who says, I want half down, right? I got to come up with 175,000. Like they're just not even close on those deals. But on these deals, because there's no equity, they might need a couple of grand to help with like the U-Haul truck. That's fine. Right. But on these no equity deals, these are the bread and butter right now. So I get into the 4 pillars of the sale, the money down, the payment that I'm gonna be taking over. I'm gonna look at the price of the house. And then on the sidelines, guys, after that call, not doing it in front of the seller. After that call hangs up and all looks good, I'm gonna call back the realtor. I'm gonna work out what their commission is gonna be, so then I could factor in all the numbers, put it together and see if it all makes sense. Right? So if I'm on a $500,000 house in Florida and the seller's burying their feet in the sand and the realtor says, I want 6% commission. If not, no deal, and I'm looking to come up with 30 grand, that could be a killer of a deal if I've got to give the seller 10 grand in closing costs and who knows what, right? And not saying it would be, but obviously it's going to be an issue. So you just have to negotiate that part, the last part, and then you plug your numbers in together, plug it right in the calculator. It's going to spit out all the info and it's going to tell you if your deal is junk or hit the gas and let's go, right? And that's what's important. You don't want to spend too much time doing that. And that's what I've noticed sometimes when I'm working with students. A lot of them come to us, and I'm not going to pick on anybody, but sometimes we get this email says, hey, here's a house. They want $800,000 cash for it. And, you look on Zillow, you look up a couple of things and it's probably worth about that. And it's, if they want cash, and here's where I'm going to help you all out right now. If they want all cash on a beautiful house that's turnkey or pretty close to it, but if they want all cash, they want at the top of the market price and they need it now and they're not flexible in getting it paid off, no deal. No deal, move on. You got to do these things quickly. I don't want you spending half an hour looking at one of these, figure out if it is that or not. So once again, it is, if they want all cash, they need it all now at the top of the price range, move on. I'm going to follow up with them in 30 days, every 30 days until the house gets sold. Right. But this is where I constantly make sure that I do that, because I only want to work with sellers who will work with us. And when you talk to the right seller, it could be on $1 million house. It could be a $20,000 house. Doesn't matter. But when you talk to the right seller, they're going to give you the information you're going to need when you ask their questions. And when it comes to a deal, you'll be shocked when you ask these questions, just the simple questions. They'll say, hell yeah, that's a deal. Let's go. They're begging you to write the deal up sometimes. It's craziest thing. You'll never believe it. And you got to actually kind of hit the brakes on them and tell them, slow down a minute. I have to analyze this deal. Give me my 5 minutes because I got to see if this thing makes sense. Right? Because sometimes when you're asking these people in these situations, sometimes they've already tried the realtor route. They've already tried the I buy houses guys who want to pay 50 cents on the dollar. They tried that route and that didn't work either. You're not always the first person they reach out to. I love to say that I'm not great, but we're not. So they probably talk to somebody else too. If not, they're going to, chances are. But who do they talk to? They talk to the cash people. Not many people do this. So if I'm looking to get 50, 60 cents on the dollar on a turnkey house, good luck, especially when they can't drop the price because they owe too much, low equity, right? That's not even a factor for these people. And then if they look at what listing with an agent looks like, and they take out that commission and all that, and they look what they're going to net, sometimes that's a check they can't even afford to write and they get scared, right? So if I can't list it with a realtor, I owe too much. And I talked to the guy who says he buys houses, and I don't even want to talk about the low ball cash offer they gave me. I'm like, yeah, they suck, don't they? Right? You just don't want to be like, hey, here's your low ball cash offer. And I tell them honestly, I put in cash offers similar prices to they do because there's just a formula you give investors to figure stuff out. But that doesn't work in situations like yours. Your house is way too nice. So I leave off with a compliment and say, in this situation, the way I could stretch and get to your number, and it works well because of all these reasons, the features and benefits of working with Jenn and Joe. And once I get into this and show them how it's going to benefit them as a seller, then it's just, hey, does this work for you? And you'll be surprised how many times they're going to be like, yes, let's go. You'll have some questions that get asked along the way sometimes, which is perfectly normal. If somebody's interested in a product you're selling or something that you're doing or a service you're providing, if they ask questions, that means they're inquisitive of what's going on and not saying no. So if you're getting questions, that's not a bad thing. It's almost better. I'd rather get a couple of questions than hear complete silence. Right? Because then they say, yeah, that works for me. And then you go to send over the paperwork and they ghost you. I got a lady right now doing that. So yeah, this works for me. And all of a sudden vanished into thin air, gone. And we follow up with her. I sent her a message today. It's been like every couple of weeks she's going to get one until she calls me. Or she sells the property, right? Because I know we had a deal. Maybe she just needs more money for the house. I don't know. But if we don't talk about it, I'll never know. So when they come to you with questions, especially on terms, that's not a bad thing. You just have to know what to say. And sometimes it could be just something as that's a great question. Let me write that down and I'm going to check with, whomever, and I'll get right back to you on that. And that's one of the best things to do is when you're talking with people who they just don't know, you might not have that answer readily available. Maybe it is okay just to write that down rather than give some BS, right? So do that instead. Really simple. So we like to buy the houses on terms. I prefer to buy it where we own it, but it won't avoid doing a lease purchase like we said earlier, because what we could do is like we talked about is the sandwich lease purchase. And this is one of the best ways to control real estate with no money. You don't have closing costs. You're going to lease the property from a seller. So we have a situation we're going on to today. The house is in Georgia, guys. This thing is absolutely beautiful. 3,000 square foot brick house. The ladies had it listed for 450, drops the price, keeps dropping the price. She owes 277 on it. It was listed. They just took it off the market after being on there for literally almost a year, off and on. Since it was June last year is actually when it was on. Sorry, not quite a year, but we're getting close. So part of the question is, well, she's like, I want to get money to go to my next property. I need at least 100 grand. So what we explained to her is with using that realtor, even if you got a low offer, by the time you take out commissions on that, you wouldn't have had 100 grand. You have closer to 60. And she explains to her she really would want more money than that. We're talking about terms, but the one question we asked her is, so what happens if you don't sell this house? So I'm going to give you guys all a little tip right now. You're getting a ton of extra value today. I'm giving you like the secret sauce, but you're getting some good stuff. So I hope you're writing some of this down. And it's nothing that I'm giving you is some breakthrough freaking thing. It's really not, but it's a process, right? And something that works. So when I'm working with a seller who I've seen that they've tried to sell their house for the last year, often on the market hasn't sold, I ask her, what happens if you don't sell it? And if they tell you that they're just going to end up renting out the house, guys, you could be sitting on a deal right in front of you, right? So this is why I ask that question, because you're going to put that little fork in the road. If they say, well, I'll just keep on listing it. Okay, I know the avenue I'm going to take with that conversation. But this is a qualifying question right here that's very simple to ask. What happens if you guys don't sell it? Oh, I'm just going to end up renting it. And if you hear that, what's the direction I take on that? Go to the finance, create a finance playbook, pull out the play. I got an audible. The defense is showing me this. This is the route I'm going to take here. The route is, well, then why don't you just lease it to me? And it's even better than just leasing it to me rather than just some Joe Schmo off the street, is that mine's one step further into you selling this house is what's called a lease purchase, which means I'm going to lease it from you with a purchase price locked in that I'm going to buy your house for. The best thing about it is no commissions to pay for a realtor because you're going to sell it directly to me, the renter. So it's going to avoid any real estate commissions. And that's going to give me some time to do what I need to do to get this all squared away. The benefit of my agreement, because our agreements rock, and it's a different agreement we have when we're buying than when we are with selling. But our agreement that when we're buying says that we're responsible for all the maintenance, repairs, utilities. So Mrs. Seller, if you rent this to Joe Schmo off the street and the hot water tank goes, you're going to have to go spend the money to go put a new one in there. And under my agreement, if that goes in there, I have to call a licensed plumber and have them put it in there and I pay for it. So my agreement's a lot better. So why don't you just lease it to me then? Right. So the benefit of giving me a break on what they would be paying, because generally my payment is going to be exactly covering their payment. I'm not going to pay any extra. And the reason for that is because I'm now responsible for all the maintenance repairs, like I just told you. Right. So this is where I'm now, my agreement also says that I could lease this to somebody else with the option for them to buy it. And I'm going to let them know, obviously, I'm an investor. I want to buy your house, but I'm not going to live in it. So I'm going to put in one of my renters who I'll be managing the whole process, but their goal is to get a loan down the road. And once they do, we all get cashed out. But I don't dig too much into that conversation till a little bit further later on. More of, I'm trying to lock up the deal and why don't you lease it to me? And if they agree to that, guys, I'm gonna drop another little nugget for you. I told y'all you're in for a treat. So yeah, Joe, that does work. That does sound like a good idea because I don't want to have to worry about the maintenance because I'm moving out of state and I don't have to worry about the management of it. So you're telling me if I lease it to you, you handle all of that? Yes, I would. Okay, that sounds like a good thing. I'll do that. So then let me ask you a question then. Would you rather me lease it or would you rather just me buy it from you? Well, obviously you'd rather me just buy it, more likely, just because, obviously it's one step further from what you're trying to do. Then if you'd rather do that, then let me buy it with the seller financing. And what's called a ladder, guys, I start working my way back up the ladder, right? It's the ladder close is what we call those. So if they say absolutely not, this isn't going to work for me, seller financing. What happens if you don't sell it? Well, I'm going to lease it. I'm at the bottom of the ladder. I'm going up this ladder now. The ladder that I'm taking here is to lease it to me. If they agree to that, I'm going to take it one step further. Then would you rather lease it to me or would you rather me just buy it? Because I'll be honest with you, I'd rather just buy the thing. And if they say, well, yeah, I would rather you buy it, well, then good. Well, then why don't we take it the next step further where I've already bought it, but I'll still be making the same payment, but now I own it. And you work back up. There's a little good one for you guys, a little nugget for you for today. So when you're negotiating, this is why I love these creative finance deals. It's not just a cash deal. We're explaining something that's a little bit more intricate than just this is my cash number. Okay, no, okay, yes, whatever. Love those deals. We make them. But the whole thing is when you're doing this, there's so many more levels to it. You want to know kind of different avenues to take the seller down the process. So this is why we are very, very big on process of what we do. And with our own team, right? We have VAs that handle the script. Once it goes to VAs, our acquisitionist goes through it. She goes through all these leads. She starts putting all these things together to figure out what these deals look like. She's going to make the calls to determine if we're going to put it on a closing call. Once that goes onto a closing call, we're going to make that call, kind of go over these same things that we've just talked about. And if they say, no, Joe, that doesn't work for me, well, then what happens, Jen, if you're not going to sell it? If they say, I'm going to lease it, well, then this is the way I take with that every time, right? So this is what I do, is we make these closing calls. These are the things that will help you when you're talking to sellers, because ideally, especially in a lot of these situations, they don't want a deal. So if you're able to offer them a solution that makes sense, and sometimes just renting it to you versus somebody else would make easier sense. And then you're kind of breaking down some of those barriers of, that trust is, they got to trust you, right? If you can help break down some of those barriers of that, and they would rent it to you. The next step is to sell it to you. You're going to find these deals are plentiful right now. So when we are working with tenant buyers, we've talked about this before, we buy on terms, but we also sell on terms. And why do we do that? Our cash on cash return, guys, is way better than anything else that you're getting out there. If I got to shell out 20 grand to go buy a deal, I just got a $15, $25, $30,000, $40,000 non-refundable option deposit. My cash on cash return, guys, is infinite at that point. There are very few deals where we have money left in there to where we bought a deal with creative finance, right? We added up the closing cost and the 3 months of payments. We have a cost of acquisition worksheet. It's free. You guys all have it. It is so easy. Right on our creativefinanceplaybook.com. If you don't already have it, go to creativefinanceplaybook.com. Cost of acquisition worksheets right on there. Download it. So when you're looking at these deals, it's not just no money down. There's so many other factors that go into it. But once you add up all those factors, say a no money down deal is 20 grand. It very well could be for us. But if we put a tenant buyer in there, and we just had one recently, our cost of acquisition was 18 grand. It was $1,000 down deal for the seller. Our cost of acquisition was 18,000. We collected a $23,000 non-refundable option deposit in that deal. So we're up 5 grand. With no money involved, we're up $5,000. We're making monthly cash flow, and we have an asset now, right? That we have, it's an infinite return on. Put in a tenant buyer. They are now happy as can be. They have this beautiful house. They're chasing us down to where do I set up my rent portal through and all the good stuff, right? And they have things set up. So this is why we love doing that, because my velocity of what I could do with my money goes a lot faster than if I had to do $20,000 down and I put in a renter and I'm making $300 a month. Right? Not saying it's bad. Everybody's got a strategy, but you also have to make those management calls and all that kind of crap. And I don't want to deal with that. And I told this guy, listen, pretty much after we've done this, like I'm going to ghost you and you're never going to hear from me again. Because if you buy a house and you finance it through Wells Fargo, they're never going to say, we're going to do a walkthrough. The guy at Wells Fargo doesn't come knocking at your door like, hey, I'm the people holding your mortgage. I'm here to look at that. It doesn't happen unless you stop making payments. Right. So I told them that if you make your payments on time and I don't hear from the neighbors or the town that you've got grass that's 10 feet long in your backyard and you got your beautiful home, like, guys, congratulations. Here you go. If you need anything, let me know. But you know how it goes from here on out. Just pay your rent on time and you'll never hear from us. And that's the way it should be. For us, that's how it is. And honestly, I don't want to fly all the way up to Niagara Falls. It's too damn cold up there. So that's just my take on it. So I'm happy we could do that for these folks. And that's the way we treat all of our tenant buyers. We could walk right by the supermarket and never notice them. And they wouldn't recognize us either. And Jen kind of even asks sometimes who is the person at this property. She'll say a name and I'm supposed to put a property to that. We have no idea. I don't. She does. So we buy on terms. We sell on terms in a different way. In a different way is we typically buy with no money down. But when we're selling on terms, we want big non-refundable option deposits. The bigger, the better, right? We've got one lady right now who, just to let you know, Jen, who wants Canandaigua. She's got 13 grand down. She's already seen it. I'll take it at 13 grand down because she's got to worry about paying her last month's rent in her house, moving expenses, things like that. Getting a couple of new furniture for the house, and she doesn't want to use up all of her money. So then we have somebody else going to look at it this weekend. It's got 20 grand down. So once again, you have the right to pick. Do you take the girl's 13 grand down? She's ready to go, or we told her, we put her on ice and said, we'll let you know, but I got somebody walking through this weekend who's got 20 grand down. So you could get some time to be more money, and we'll still think about your application. But at this point, it's still a little on the light side. However, she said she was willing to pay an extra $200 a month over rent every month, which would just be extra cash flow, which would be great for that property. So I'm telling you, I told Luca that I said, I'll have to have talk with Jen. So I'm glad I have it in front of all of you.
Oh, so nice to have our business discussion in front of a nice live audience of 33 other people.
There you go, guys. You get to hear what it's like being Joe and
Live
Jen.
action.
Right from the office. So that's what's going on live right now. Real deal, real situation, real property that we have. But this is why we like it, right? Because we get to pick. This is a property we already bought on terms with, I think, no money down a year ago. Put a tenant buyer in. They gave us 12 grand to move in. Stopped paying rent. We had them evicted, cleaned the place out, and we're going to put somebody else in there now who's got another 15, 20 grand down. Right. So in New York, we're buying some of these properties where they don't have the best landlord laws. They're very hostile towards landlords. But this is some insurance that we do on our end to make sure our tenant buyers are going to do the right thing. They've got skin in the game. And we're helping people turn from renters into owners. And yeah, we do get a check, don't get me wrong, and that's nice. But seeing the smiles on their faces, guys, you can't put a dollar amount on there. And I'm not just saying that to be like whatever, but it is actually really freaking cool because every one of these people you kind of become friends with. You become tight with them. And over time of them being in these properties for a while, and they show you their family over there for Thanksgiving. And we're friends on Facebook, so you see what's going on half the time anyways. When you see them now owning it, and it's years later and their family's still there and they're having, Christmas at the house, that kind of stuff is really, really awesome. And we've helped people who said, I never thought I'd own a house. And now they do. So we love to be able to do that kind of stuff. And yeah, it pays well too. And it does. So this is the factor of you're doing a lot of really, really cool things with our process. So when we buy on terms, once again, we buy with very little to no cash down, knowing going into it, and our calculator even has a spot for how to supercharge your ROI using the rent to own method. So what does that do? That even gives you an extra box to where you're figuring out all of your numbers on a normal deal. And if you want to do the rent to own method, just to kind of see what that would look like, you could put some extra information there, one more step, and it'll tell you what your numbers look like on that deal, and you will see it freaking blow up. And that's what we do. So when our team is looking at a deal, this is the thing that I factor every single time. And this is where I figure out, I'm like, holy cow, get that seller on the phone. We want this deal, right? Hurry up. Or there's sometimes where I'm gonna look at a deal and say, nope, that doesn't work. For one reason or another, it won't work, right? So this is where we need to factor. And sometimes it could be the cost of entry. So once again, I'm gonna dial back to it again. Our agreements that we use, I like to do a lease purchase to where I could have no cost of entry. There's no closing costs. So if I'm at a $200,000, $300,000 property or even more, and the closing costs are 15, 20 grand, or sometimes more, depending on what you're looking at, that could crush your deal. So a lot of times I want to do that with a lease purchase to where I control that real estate with just a piece of paper. I won't even need an insurance policy on there because the owner is going to have an insurance on there from their previous policy. They're still the owner of that property. So at this point, they might want to change it over to a landlord policy, but they're still going to have the insurance under their name because it's still their property. And then we're going to install a tenant buyer, right? So what did it cost us to do that? $0. You might give them a first month's rent at one point, but I try to negotiate those for 90 days, especially on those deals, because I want 90 days to find my tenant buyer, right? Somebody I'm going to get a collect a check from. And then here's the good news. If you install your tenant buyer earlier, that's all the extra month, that's the extra rent you get to keep in your pocket. So I hope I didn't go too quickly there, but if you have no payments for 90 days and you put in a tenant buyer week 2, you collect a couple extra months of free rent, plus that non-refundable option deposit when you have to start paying the underlying payment. So good news, guys. These sandwich lease purchases, the one we do, they really are a great agreement, and that we can release it to somebody else. But our final agreement goes over how our tenant buyer is responsible for all of the maintenance, all of the repairs, all of the utilities. They know all of this. We make sure we cover things. There's a list of things we do not allow in their properties for insurance reasons, especially, and just for like, holy cow, like you don't want people doing this kind of stuff in your houses. Like no in-house daycares for us. I don't want a house turned into 30 kids running around the yard. Like no way. You're asking for a problem there, right? Trampolines, I don't allow those until you own the house. If you own the house after you buy it out, you want to have 50 trampolines in your backyard, knock yourself out. But I'm not gonna have one of these kids come flying into the air and next thing you know, I'm getting sued. And we're talking to somebody who's already gone through a lawsuit from somebody slipping and falling in the driveway. And when you get a lawsuit, they come after you and they want $250,000 for somebody who's a repeated faller when you find out their case and they repeatedly fall in different places. But hey, that's what you do. It's a way of insurance, right? You don't let those little things stop you, just keep moving. But once again, with a lease purchase, you're not even owning the property, you're just managing the whole process of what's going on. And you're going to get a good finder's fee for that, collect some monthly cash flow and a back end check once they buy you out. So these are the reasons why we love doing those deals too. So let's get into some questions, because I've been talking about this for a while, but the whole name of the game is terms. And this is why we love them. Once again, I've just gone over some examples of how you are able to negotiate these deals, how you're able to control the pen, how you're able to do a lot of these things that you can't do walking into the bank, like get 90 days till first payment, like buy real estate with no money down, just an agreement, you own this stuff and control it. Like this is the stuff like I wish I knew this when I was 20 years old, 45 now. But if you knew this at like, holy cow, right? Like you could be gone crazy to be able to do this, but this is the benefit of having that. So this calculator, we're going to have this available on creativefinanceplaybook.com. I will let you guys know the details of that once we have it all set. I'm just testing it the heck out myself a lot to make sure it's super easy to do. And it looks fantastic. You guys are going to blow your minds when you see this.
Yeah, I was
all right,
gonna
cool.
say we're gonna drop it in module 5 because module 5 is all about analyzing deals. So those enrolled in the program are going to get to use it first. And then we will definitely have the calculator on the site for sale too. But I just want to throw that out there that the Playbook members will be able to have first access to that.
Yeah, it is pretty freaking sweet.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Cool. What we got for questions, girl?
Okay, so this is going right back to the beginning here. You were talking a little bit about closing costs, and someone's asking, isn't closing costs very little? 1.5% transfer tax, and then the title company fee of like $500 to $600. So kind of giving an overall picture of how much do closing costs tend to run. Obviously, it varies, but
Yeah, that's all going to depend on where you live. That is a very price point question too, and where you live. I know Philadelphia is one place that has, I think it's about a 4.5% transfer tax. I think Pittsburgh's a 4%. I think Baltimore and Maryland is another, it's a 5% transfer tax there too. So some of these places have very, very high transfer tax. And then places like New York, especially like upstate New York, there's like almost nothing for transfer tax. It's like really weird. That's one of the things they don't crush you on. They find other ways. But every state will be different, is my point. And that depends if you're looking at a $50,000 home or a $500,000 home, because in Florida where we live, a $500,000 home really doesn't get you hardly anything at all. Where we're from upstate New York, a $500,000 house, you're living a big, huge house. So those are going to make it a big, big difference. But yeah, you can get, there's some deals that we've only paid a total of probably $3,000 in closing costs. And then there's some that have been a whole lot more. So great question. But definitely check to see where you're doing business, because if that's where you are and that's what your average is, then and I think it's same thing with Arizona. It's like almost nothing to close in places like Arizona. So I know some places are just more expensive than others.
nice. All right, back to the rent to own. Is it basically a gray area when we're talking about furnaces, AC breakings? Trace is saying he just got a quote for $8,000 to replace a furnace in Minnesota.
Jesus. Well, first of all, we're going to talk about quotes real quick. We have a house in Florida, some young kids broke into, and broke the back window out, went inside, smoked pot in the house, brought some mulch in from outside from under their shoes, brought some Christmas lights from the shed they brought in the house, and like we're probably turning them on. I don't know. Maybe they're all singing Kumbaya. I don't know, whatever they're doing in there.
Oh, they were
Either
partying.
way,
I don't want to know.
yeah, it's almost better off you don't. The house is empty, so whoop-de-doo. Either way, we talked to another investor, and he's pretty big in that area, and says, yeah. I said, I've got a broken window. Here's the window. You got anybody you recommend? He says, I do. Sends me this guy's number. The guy seems really great. Yeah, I've got a crew. This is what we do. I could have that window done in a couple of days. It's not going to be a lot. I said, okay, great. He said, what's the email address you want me to send the quote to? I said, I gave him Jenn's. He sends us a quote for one small window, $800 to do one window. Now I sat there at first. I was like, are you kidding me?
I didn't even
Like,
want to send it
and
to
then
you.
and then the other part of me was like, or am I just being an asshole? And maybe that's, and I'm like, no, I'm definitely not. There's no shot that is $800. So I'm like, I texted him. I'm like, is there something I'm missing here? There's only one broke window, right? And he's like, yeah, one window. I was like, for $800? He's like, that's right. And I'll have it installed by tomorrow. And I was like, pump the brakes, homie. Let's stop there. And then Jen puts something out in the Facebook group, and the guy's like, yeah, I'll install it. And the window is $63. So we're like $100 to install and $63 for the window. He's like, yeah, and I'll have it done by like tomorrow. Like, I think this guy ran off with our money, but it's done for $163. So, and then he knew a cleaner, which was his wife, who would clean the house for us for $100. So I had the house professionally cleaned again, and the new window installed for $260, $261, I think was the price. And which is cheaper than I could have had. Might as well have him do a whole bunch of other windows. So either way, these kids come back and break another window, I know I'm calling. So to get my point across is when you get a quote, definitely call other people. Some of the furnaces we buy are about $2,500 installed. for a decent furnace. So is it a gray area? No, it is not a gray area for us. It is crystal clear when we are buying the property. If I'm the owner and I'm putting in a tenant buyer, I give them the first 30 days. If that furnace craps out in 30 days, or if the AC unit does or something like that, then that's fine. I don't give them appliances. We do not put appliances in any one of these properties. If their appliances are in there, those are theirs to keep for free. I am not giving them. I am giving those as a gift. I'll sell them to them for $1. That's the only way. I will not furnish these with appliances. If there's appliances in there, I'll have them removed. So if they come with appliances, they're their own. We talked about the fire incident before, right? We had a fire at one of our properties, and when the fire came, they asked whose stove was it. I said it was the tenant stove, and because it was a tenant stove, and they said, yeah, I left the burner on accidentally when I left for work, and that's what caused the fire. Didn't even go on our insurance. We got our $1,000 deductible back right before Christmas, and I was like, cool. When they called, like, yeah, you're gonna get your $1,000 deductible back, I was like, get out of here. Couldn't believe it. So yeah, we make sure they bring their own appliances every time. So what are we gonna warrant for the first 30 days? The furnace. Maybe there's a leaky faucet, something like that. But after that, it's crystal clear that our tenant buyer is responsible for all the maintenance, all of the repairs, all of the utilities. We have them sign this paperwork at an attorney's office, which they pay for, not us. So I don't go over this agreement with them. The attorney does. And they sign it with the attorney, and they give all the money to the attorney. So the attorney knows to make sure that they go over all of this stuff crystal clear. I can see where they circle each box on the agreement when he's talking with them about them all. And they sign it all, so they know what they're getting into, and we do too. And they're more than happy, or we're more than glad to let them inspect it, or send somebody over there to inspect whatever they want before they buy it. But that's what the rules are. And don't get me wrong, we've made exceptions. Like I said, somebody's been in this house, condo of ours for years. Their hot water tank dies like 3 weeks before Christmas. They don't have the money. Holy cow, what are we gonna do? And we just paid for it. We didn't even charge it to them. It was just, like, I guess, our Christmas gift that year.
Yeah, but I think the key thing too is remember, like, homeowner expenses happen. Like, here we were getting ready to sell our house up in Rochester, and the AC dies right before we sell it, right? So as homeowners, that was our responsibility to replace that so we could get a great price on our sale of our house. So you always want to kind of walk them through and explain those types of things. Again, rent to own. It's kind of like the training wheels we explain into that homeowning process. So.
And you just hit it right in the head. We literally sold our house this summer, guys. We sold it in July, but in upstate New York, you don't turn on your air conditioner until June anyways. We turn the central air, doesn't work. We're selling our house in like 2 weeks, and we're putting in a brand new central air. I lived in the house for 15 years, and the central air doesn't shit the bed until 2 weeks before you're selling the house. I'm like, come on, really?
Yeah.
Kind of wait another 90 days, but hey, guess what? Another gift to the seller, the new people. But it was a selling point. The central is brand new. So, I mean, maybe it's why they paid over asking for it when the market was still slowing down. Who knows? But either way, but you're right. This is a training wheels program to home ownership. So some of these things happen from time to time. So, expect it to happen. No different than if you want to paint your daughter's bedroom or paint your bathroom or whatever you can, like, go knock yourself out. You want to paint this some lime green color, some weird stuff, like, it can be your house eventually. So go ahead. And if they don't stay, we always have the bedrooms all painted white anyways. So when somebody new moves in, if they want to paint a different color, go ahead. But we stopped painting all the trendy colors.
So we have a couple more questions. I want to welcome Cameron. This is his first time here, so welcome. We're so happy to see you. We love to share as much real life as you can see as possible. So do we lease option our tenants? Yes, that's why we call them tenant buyers, because they are treated differently than an actual, just a tenant. They're putting a nice size, non-refundable option deposit down. As far as the term length, we don't say 5 to 6 years. You want to kind of go into that about the down payment, the interest amount, and the term length?
Yeah. As we sit here, our newest one just texted me and said, what do you want me to do with this? It's a lockbox. I need to tell them Merry Christmas. Tell them keep it in the closet. So if you guys ever leave, and I got to reuse it, my guy could just use the same lockbox again. That actually, we did that recently to our other house. The guy that got evicted left the old lockbox behind, thankfully, and we just clipped it on the door, changed the combination. So
So nice of
maybe
him.
I'll tell him to leave it at the house just in case we ever need it again.
No, oh my gosh. Don't.
Okay, so the question was, sorry.
Yeah. Term length, how much are we getting
Term
down? Is there an interest amount? Are you holding the note? Essentially, seller holds more, ownership is in your name. So I guess you need to kind of back it up a little bit and really explain what a lease to own lease option is here.
Got it. Okay, so lease option means that we own it. We're the owners, right? And they're leasing it from us. Now, if we're doing a sandwich lease where a previous owner still owns it, then that's a different story. The majority of the time we own the house, we have a tenant buyer who's leasing it from us. The tenant buyer, in no circumstances, because they are still a tenant, own the house, right? They're still the tenant. We do make sure that they do have a insurance renters policy. I don't care if they do or not, but I want to make sure they do. If they don't, like, I don't go chase them down, but I tell them, it's important to have one. We had somebody have a fire, so please make sure you do. But yeah, down payment is typically about 5 to 10% down. We shoot for 10. We never tell them. We always ask what's the most you could put down, but we never tell them the number unless they say I've only got 5. Then we say it's a lot less than we prefer. But if you want to go look at the property, you can still go check it out. Just at least get them to go see it, because you know how it goes, guys. Like, you might see something online you really want, but you don't buy it. But then you walk by the store and there it is in front of you and you're touching it and you're falling in love with it. And all of a sudden you're trying to figure out, how am I going to buy this? I want it. Right. So what happens is, in the car business, was the feel of the wheel makes the deal. So what does that mean is, you got to get them in the house. Somebody's got $5,000 down, goes and sees the house. Next, they ask mom for 10 more and they got 15 and they're ready to go. So we always get them in the house, go have them take a look at it. But our goal is 10%, but 5% would probably be the least I would take, which is the one I was telling you about earlier, hon. They're about 6%. So
We'll
what other
stop
questions? I know. I'm
Is
just
there-
messing with you.
Are you charging an interest rate?
No, there's no interest we charge because they don't own it. We're just renting it to them. If we were to sell it to them with seller financing, then we charge an interest rate. But then I don't want to do that because I don't own the house anymore. And if they don't pay me, now I have to foreclose versus just evict. And then sometimes you have people tell you like, hey, my job just transferred me, so I'm not going to be able to buy this house after all, we're leaving. And then if they're leaving, I'd rather just terminate the lease and let them go rather than have to, deed the property back to me and go through all that around. That'd be a nightmare.
So what you just said,
not a
I want to
nightmare, but
stop that.
more work.
I want to stop you real quick because it might be confusing to people. So there's a strict difference between rent to own versus like just handing over the wrap payment or seller financing the house. So this is how we choose to do our business. And Joe's giving you some really great insight as to why we're doing that.
Thank you, dear. And the term length, what happens is, for us, when we find a tenant buyer, just so you know, is we look for somebody who is, we send them to screenthetenant.com. Screenthetenant.com is going to give us a report and say, Joe and Jen, these people are going to be mortgage ready, we believe, in 18 to 24 months. So then if that's the case, what we do is I'm going to write that lease up for 2 years. And then they have the option to renew it after that, but we have to revisit the terms. So the market goes way, way up. I have the option to charge them more if I want. It could be rent, it could be the price, it could be both. The market goes down, I have the option to leave it the same or lower it if I really want to. But I will tell you what, I would most likely 100% of the time leave it the same. All right, so that's what we do, but I'll give them usually a 2-year term, and then they have the right to renew it after that every year. It turns into a 1 year. So if every year we decide a new agreement and I just keep the numbers the same, I can do that. And if at one point I want to change it, I can also do that too. And if you're going to, that's the time to do it. I will tell you, the market just changed a lot, and a lot of our tenant buyers didn't pay or didn't get us cashed out, which is kind of crazy because when you send out new agreements, you can literally just make a ton more money on paper. It's all on paper, but it's all true. You've now resold these houses at a different price and you start doing that over a number of houses. That could be a lot of extra money that you've just raised. Once again, it's not in your pocket yet, but it's on paper. And, if any of them do cash out, those are the terms they're going to get you cashed out at. So, great question.
Mhm. All right, Jay's asking, Joe, for the house you spoke of where the guys just bought the house and have no equity, you mentioned that they already have another house picked out. How are they planning on paying for it? Did they say?
So, good news is I asked the realtor, do they need to sell this house first before they're able to buy their next house? And he said, nope. Done. So if they say yes, I could buy it as a lease purchase. And then once they do that, I talked about the seller finance method, but I could write it up as a lease purchase because if I do it as a lease purchase, they could use my lease payment day one to wash out 75% of their DTI. Versus if I buy it on a wrap mortgage or if you buy it subject to, they generally need 12 months of payments before they can start applying that towards the debt. And it's called stated income, right? So if they're going to use stated income for a mortgage, they have to receive that usually for 12 payments for 12 months. So the reason why, if they need to buy something right away, I could write it up as a lease purchase. And the benefit of that is if they close April 15th and their first payment isn't even due 15th or June 1st, but my agreement says that Joe's going to take my property May 1st, 2 weeks after they've already closed, that still works for the lease purchase. So there are many reasons why I could write it up as a lease purchase, and then 3 months later, I could execute the purchase, pay the closing costs, and then turn that into where now I own it, but I own it with a wrap mortgage or subject to, right? And then by the time those 3 months roll away, what did I do? Put in a tenant buyer who probably gave me 20 grand. So now I got that 20 grand. Guess what I'm using for my closing costs? Using that money, right? So I could literally be into a deal with no money and turn it into where I own it within a very short amount of time, put in a tenant buyer, totally cash flowing and doing very well. So that's one of the questions I always ask is, do they need to sell this house first before they buy their next house? Because if they say yes or no, that's going to help dictate what way you're going to take the conversation. Great question.
Mhm. All right, how are we dispoing these types of deals because you're closing on it yourself? And how do we find the tenant buyers?
So how we dispo them is we take it back to 2017 when we had a whole bunch of rentals, and Jen and myself started learning about this in 2016, and we said, oh, son of a gun, all these leases come due, we're not going to renew them, we're going to let them have the first right to do this rental, but if they don't want it, when their lease is up, they're going to have to leave. And then we're going to put in all new tenant buyers and we're going to do rental with every one of these houses. We already had half a dozen at that time. So not a ton at once, but when you have a half dozen of these houses sitting in your books, you're making monthly payments on them, you want to get these things dispoed right away. So this was what we will forever be known as the crazy summer of 2017, where if Jen didn't strangle me that summer, I knew we could survive anything. Because it was every time in my car, we were always listening to more education. That's all we listened to that whole year. We had hired a coach, tons of different training we were experiencing. And then we were dispoing 6 different properties all ourselves with rent to own. And this is where we knew, like, holy cow. So we put it on Zillow. We put it on Craigslist. We put yellow signs in the front yard and all over town. We put on Facebook groups, Facebook Marketplace. Probably got kicked out of Facebook a whole bunch of different times for doing that, but kept coming back for more. And it's just sharing. And then I would also put on our own Facebook page, like if any of my friends out there or family know somebody who's looking for this opportunity, we also pay you $1,000 referral fee if you send somebody our way who buys one of these deals. So like you're also turning your friends and family to almost being like little mini agents working for you, right? Because we tell them like, hey, if you find me somebody who wants this, I pay you $1,000. So we were able to obviously dispo all of those properties and then many more after that using those same techniques. Um, there was times where I would be at work all day long and I would have ads out on Facebook and Jen would be home with the kids doing a zillion different things. She would have ads out on Facebook. I would get home like, hey, hon, I was so busy. I had like 150 leads reach out to me today. She's like, I had 400. I'm like, what the hell? Like, we would have so many people reach out to us per day. It was insanity. So we got to a point where we hired people to help us because when she's trying to do her thing, I'm trying to do my thing, and you get 500 people reach out to you a day, it got to be like stupid busy. The better you are at marketing it, the more of those you'll have. I've had some people say that they've tried dispoing their property. I have had no luck. Nobody even reached out to me. I'm like, well, you didn't dispo it like how we dispo it. And that's the difference. So you got to think that it's 17, 18% of the country can qualify for a mortgage. So our audience is like an 80% of the country. So not all of them have money, but they're all going to reach out to you. And out of the people who do, majority of them don't have money. But they're still going to want to see about this opportunity because there's not a lot of them out there. How many rent to own properties are in your city? It's available with bad credit, okay, and no banks necessary to move in today. There's not a lot, if any. Chances are there's none. So if you have the one of one in your city, and you're catering to 80% of the population in that area, you kind of have a unique opportunity for somebody, and it's housing, which is one thing that everybody needs. It's not, like I don't like cheeseburgers, I don't like whatever. Like it's everybody needs housing. So it's an amazing opportunity for folks. So once you advertise it the right way, you should have more people reaching out to you than you should know how to handle. That's why we recommend getting like an answering service. We hired Pat Live, they're called. They're great. They answer our inbound calls. We have a dispo guy, manager right in our team. He handles all the marketing for us, and we were just going over that before we got into this meeting. And that's
And
exactly what
VAs,
we
I
do.
would definitely stress VAs. I wish we had utilized them a lot sooner too, just to get some quick responses back and forth. Because the inbound messages are a bit nutty. So there's definitely same ways you're going to find renters, but again, you're going to have to sift through because you're really looking for this qualified tenant buyer. So.
Mhm.
All right. Well, this is a good question here. Did you and Jen work a W-2 for some time? If you don't have a consistent W-2, isn't it hard to get a traditional equity cash out?
Well, so yes, Jen had a W-2 for a long time. I had a W-2 for a very long time too. But the neat thing about terms, and the reason why I like terms so much is because you don't need a W-2 to buy a house with seller financing or on a lease purchase. So I don't need money for that. If I wanted to get a loan, and I kind of have a little bit of a leg up on some just because my last job was working at a car dealership in the finance office. So I know all the different banks and I know what they like and don't like. So I know some banks, there's some small credit unions that you don't even need to have a job to get a loan. Believe it or not. If you've got good credit, there are some credit unions. I know one of them back in Rochester, it's ESL. And if you are around Rochester, you know the credit union ESL, you don't even need a job to get a loan. If your credit is so much, they give you up to like 10 grand or something. So I don't need loans for stuff like that. And once again, when you're using other people's money, if you need to, maybe because sometimes if you don't have enough cash to get your first deal, right? So we run into circumstances. Sometimes I'll give you an example. We'll have somebody who has a free and clear house. I got a lady right now in Texas we're talking to. Her house is probably worth 125. She says, I'll take 100 for it, but she would want half down. She'd be open to terms, but she wants 50 grand down because she needs that money to buy her next property. So we explained to her, if you don't own anything on yours, the one thing that we've done before in the past that really worked well, instead of me coming up with 50 grand, is to go borrow 50 grand against your house in a home equity loan. And I could take over that payment. I'll pay the tax and insurance on top of that. And I'll pay that until I get you cash out in the second half. Right? So how am I able to buy that with no money down? The best thing about it is I tell her, if you want to sell it to me for 500, I'm sorry, for 100,000, and you want to take out a loan out for 50, take a loan out for 55 and sell me the house at 105 and you cover all the closing costs. So really, I'm paying the closing costs, and I'm paying more for the house, but I don't have to come up with any money to buy the house now. So you get her to take a loan out, she needs 50, tell her to take a loan out for 55, put the extra 5 into the price of the house, but I'm paying for it, which I still got free equity. I figure the house is worth 120, 125 anyways. Right? And now I'm gonna buy that house with no money down. And she's gonna cover the closing costs. So she's gotta talk to her lender, see what that looks like. But it sounds like to me, this could be some great option for her too, because the payment on $50,000 is still enough for us to cash flow once we put in the taxes and insurance. So there's a lot of stuff being built around it, in Texas. So cool.
All right.
Good question.
Question about follow-up. What are your follow-ups with the seller? I feel like that's kind of a loaded question.
I mean, we have a few different patterns. If it's a seller who wants full price, all cash, want it now, we follow up with them every 30 days. We don't call them considerably motivated. If we have somebody who I see is motivated to sell, we could be getting a hold of them daily. If we've had an appointment with you, for an example, to get on a call together, I sense motivation, we sense pain. Maybe they even talked to one of us at once, but they skipped out on the next call. We have a sequence in our CRM called the psycho sequence, which acts like your psycho ex-girlfriend or a psycho ex-boyfriend, where this thing just calls you nonstop. This messages you. And we have a list of questions or things that it says to them. It's all very nice, but what happens is this: I have a 4:00 phone call scheduled with a seller. They said, yes, let's go. They ghost me on my 4:00 phone call. I don't want to be sitting here trying to track them down, texting them all the time. So I just get them, I put them right into the psycho sequence, and that psycho ex-boyfriend keep getting a hold of them until all of a sudden they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, I was, whatever, and they come back. And then it does, I get a notification to get that on, because I don't want to track them down. So I guess you are right here. That was a very loaded question. So we could get a hold of you a few times a day, once a week, or once a month, depending on how much we like you or don't like you.
Well, then on top of it, it depends on where you're at in your business, right? Because if you don't have a CRM chasing it down yet and you don't have the funds for that, don't run out and go buy one. But are you keeping yourself organized with one of the many gadgets? Like Abby was on here a few weeks ago. She says Notion. She gave a whole tutorial. That's really helpful. Are you using Google Calendar? Are you just, old school paper and pencil, like writing it down? Like whatever works for you, do it. It's just actually whatever you're going to stay focused and following up with a person. I think that's the most important thing. I know Mike was on here earlier. I think he might have hopped off, but he is probably one of my favorite people to talk about follow-up with, because that guy doesn't quit. He was our former student. He's one of our coaches. He and Jay are just rock star follow-up, and it pays off. I mean, he had how many thousands of dollars in closing and assignment fees because he followed up the last couple of months?
It's been insane. So
Yeah.
he had a deal that you were just talking about. He made the deal after a year and 7 months of following up.
Mm-hmm.
So over a year and a half of, hey, do you still want to sell? They finally got the deal. So this is where they always say in sales, fortune is in the follow-up. You guys want the secret sauce of the recipe? There you go. It's not secret sauce, but there it is. And you just got to be really good at it. And he is relentless. He had one guy say to him before, he was like, you're getting effing annoying. And he was like, hey, I'm so sorry, but when you told me that you want to sell your house and you kind of want to do it quick, I'm just making sure I'm not dropping the ball. The guy's like, no, but I will sell you my house. I promise. And then he got the deal. But also, he's relentless on follow-up. But once again, if you give a dog a bone, that boy did not let go. He's all over it. So that's part of what it takes, right?
I have a little interview I did with them, so I'll get that video all together and make sure you guys can see that, because he does share some cool tips there. All right, next question is about fees. Do you have a ballpark figure for what it costs to craft a seller finance purchase agreement, form a land trust, and do a sign option agreement at the attorney?
Okay, so to buy the house on terms, if that's what you're asking. So I'll give you an example. In New York, we could buy a house for probably $100,000 to $200,000, and you're probably around 4, 5, 6 grand. You buy a house in Florida, it seems like it's probably about another $2,000 to $3,000 more than that. I think at PA it's a little cheaper. I think when you get into places like we've done deals in Arkansas, dirt cheap. I think Illinois, if I can remember, was a little bit expensive.
So
So
the actual
realistically, though,
agreements,
to do the agreement itself, it shouldn't be much at all.
okay.
I mean, to do the agreement, we do it ourselves. You just have to have the purchase and sale agreement. You fill it out. You sign it. They sign it. That doesn't cost you anything. You
And
just
then
gotta
the
get
land
an
trust.
agreement. So the land trust is 4 or 5 pieces of paper. And the land trust should only cost maybe a few $100s. Now, don't get me wrong, guys. If you talk to somebody out there and they're going to do a land trust for you, they're going to buy, when you buy the property, they deed it to a land trust because that's what we do. If it costs anything more than like 3, 4, $500, run. I had one of my buddies try to do it in Detroit, and he's like, and a lawyer told him it was going to cost him $10,000 to do a land trust. And I was like, you need to hang up the phone on that person, or if you're in their office, get up now and walk out. Don't even say goodbye. Like, yeah, so it should only cost a few $100. It's like 5 pieces of paper.
Right.
That answer that?
Yeah, I think he was just looking for, I think, how much it's going to cost him if he goes to the table and needs all these agreements done.
Yeah, so when you're filling out the purchase and sale agreement, it doesn't cost you nothing. The attorneys won't, they'll throw it on your lap to do, most likely. And then when you're going to have your tenant buyer, one last thing I could add to this. So when we put in a rent-to-own tenant buyer, and that tenant buyer is going to go to the attorney's office and they're going to sign all the paperwork there. They're only signing a lease agreement with an option rider. Okay, so it's a lease agreement and an option rider. It's nothing this big, huge packet. There might be a couple other disclosures that are in our mix too that we use, but that's really about it. A lead paint addendum, stuff like that. So for that, it should take half an hour, maybe 45 minutes if they ask questions. If it takes more than an hour, your attorney's giving you the gaff. Because every single one of these things, you should have already answered. My tenant buyers know that they're responsible for all the maintenance repairs. They know
Maybe
it's a
they're being really
non-refundable.
thorough.
I'm happy they are, but I've seen the agreement. I've done it myself and it doesn't take that long. But once again, whatever, it doesn't matter to me because I'm not paying for it. So
Yeah.
to answer the question though, when we send our rent-to-own tenant buyers to the attorney's office, they bring a check for Jen and myself for the non-refundable option deposit. They bring a check for first month's rent, and they also bring a separate check made out to the attorney's office for whatever the attorney's charging them for that closing of the paperwork. And that's usually about $400, $400 or $500. So I tell them, bring me the check for the 23,000, bring the check for the first month's rent. So your total will be this, and then you're going to need a separate check for this amount made out to the attorney's office for that. So they're going to show up there, all these certified checks, getting ready to sign some stuff. And usually they're out of there in 20 minutes.
And I do have to give us a little plug here because on the very last module, module 6, it will be all about the contracts, the agreements, and we are supplying everything and anything that we talk about that you would need. And I know that's been in high demand. So we aim to please and we are here to serve. So I know everyone's really looking forward to that module as well. We have some awesome contracts in there for everybody to be able to use and obviously go to their attorneys and double check and make sure every state that they're doing it in complies. But I know that's for some reason, that's kind of one of the reasons people stop because they don't have the contract, even though they don't even have the deal done yet. So excuses no more. Here are the contracts.
Well, we have also spent a lot of money, having those done this way. I mean, a lot of money having these done this way, way more than even our whole course counts just on the agreements alone. And that's because we've been doing this for a very, very long time. So we're very particular. But these agreements, and this is where Jen's getting to, they're good in all 50 states. Okay, so it's not just one state. But what you do want to do is make sure that you have your attorney look over the agreement too, to make sure that it all looks good to them. And if there's anything they might want to add to it or not, that's fine. But definitely, these are the agreements that we've been using for a very long time. So part of it, you guys get those too. So that's our purchase and sale agreement. That's the lease purchase when you're buying. There's the lease option when you're selling. So we have the sandwich lease, all of that kind of stuff's in there too. So you get a bunch of our checklists and other great things too. But The agreements are the one things though. And you know, what I've always learned with real estate is the success is in the small details. Like we all call people, you want to sell your house, you know, it's all that stuff, but the success of why some people are wildly successful versus mild or not at all, it's some of these small details. So I've always learned from a very, very, very beginning is make sure the one thing you have your butt together on is your agreements. Don't get yourself in some trouble there. Even like our assignment agreements, fantastic. So very cool.
But don't use it as an excuse to like not go talk to sellers either.
Mhm.
Alrighty, so does anyone ever look at the condition of the property or inspect it? And the answer is yes. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're having somebody look at it. I think the best protocol, if you're not in person, you do a virtual walkthrough if the seller can figure it out. I know sometimes older folks have a little trouble, but I always love that way, getting, you know, recent pictures. But then also, we've had training on it too, where you get someone off of Thumbtack, you hire them to go over with your inspection sheet that we have free on our website. You can download that and use it. And you just want a general overview. It doesn't have to be a professional inspection, but you want to know like the age of the roof, roughly the photos of that, and really get a great sense. Like we had my stepdad, Mark, went over and he took tons of photos and videos of a house for us. And had he not done that, we wouldn't realize some of the condition it was in. So definitely you want to get some boots on the ground and make sure you're inspecting what the property actually looks like inside and out.
Right. Yeah, spot on. And that's why just having that walkthrough gives you the ability to do it virtually. Right. Hire a professional in the area. That's how I found out when I walked through the floor. He's like, yeah, the floors in this area are a little soft. So, you know, there's issues below, you know, so we have that idea. So, but once again, I will do the flip side of that too. What happens worst case scenario, you didn't do it and you bought the house, you need to come up with $3,000 in closing costs. And then you find out you're in a hot mess express. Right, you could just deed the property right back to him, worst case scenario, and say, you know, hot potato. And say, no, thank you. Worst case scenario. So I want to know what the worst case scenario is, right? Because I will tell you, if I bought a house, I financed it with Wells Fargo or Bank of America and said, oh, you know what, I bought this house without inspecting it, and I didn't realize it had all these problems. So I'm just gonna give the house right back to you guys. What does that work with? How does that work? Right? So think about that for a minute. That's why I love doing this.
I do
So-
notice like when you do have something like written out really well and accurate photos, it tends to go like dispo faster too if you are assigning the deal or whatnot. Just what I've noticed as well. Trace has a great question. Is it a little harder to move homes if you have a rent to own home around the 400K mark to find a rent to own buyer? Can it be a little harder to find people with more money essentially? Obviously parts of Florida are getting a little ridiculous in pricing.
I guess it's all relative. I mean, I will tell you where our sweet spot is. It's not necessarily a dollar amount per se. It's being at the median price range or under that in your city. When the market took a big hit in 2008, guys, when everybody was buying in 2009, 10, 11, even the big buyers, they were buying all of the lower end stuff, the less expensive houses. They weren't going for the high end stuff. So you stick to the median price range and slightly under, and that's always been my comfort range. But what's the median price range in your city? That's going to depend on where you live. So in some places, especially down here in Florida, as mentioned earlier, it's 400,000 doesn't really get you much at all. I think your lots are a few $100,000 down here. So that's the trouble you run into is the price of median house here might be $400,000. But in other places, like where we're from originally in upstate New York, where your average price range is probably 175, right? So if it's 175, I want to keep in that range, even less than that. So I like those. I call them popcorn, just easy bunch of them, and it all works out well. So the big ones though, don't get me wrong, we have some really big ones, and those are some of our most profitable deals too. So I don't want to scare you away from the big ones. They're just, which I've learned, and it took me a while to understand this. But do you know the difference between a $100,000 home and $1 million home, it's not 900 grand, it's just one extra zero. One extra zero from $1 million to 100 grand. So when I'm looking at $100,000 house, or I'm looking at $1 million house, I stopped getting scared of it. Right? Because where I'm from originally in upstate New York, I'm looking at $150,000 homes. $1 million home from where I'm from, holy cow. Right? $1 million house here in Florida gets you a 2,200 square foot house that's 5 years old. That's what $1 million house costs around here. So it's insanity. So there's just relative to where you're used to. So when you're down in this market, you're dealing with $900,000, $1.2 million houses often. So just what your median house range and less is where I'd love to be. That's my sweet spot.
Okay. It's getting kind of late here. I'm trying to pick a couple of last ones. Are mortgage wrap buyers the same as retail buyers?
One more time.
Are mortgage wrap buyers the same as retail buyers?
Guess, and I'd like to get more clarification where, so they're not going to be different because with a retail buyer, they have to go to the bank, right? They have to get an appraisal. They've got to get inspections. They've got to put a certain amount of money down. They have to pay all these fees, right? Where if we're going to be doing a deal with a wrap mortgage, there's no bank approval. I'm not getting my credit checked. It's more just giving that paper to the attorneys and let them do their magic. There's less fees involved typically because I'm not paying for the appraisals. I don't have to pay for the inspections and all that stuff. Now you might still get it inspected, that's fine. But if I bought a house that was just purchased 1 year ago, chances are I'm not even gonna do that. Especially if I'm only paying $4,000 or $5,000 in closing costs. I don't even have it inspected most of the time. It's a beautiful house in a beautiful neighborhood. It's mostly turnkey. When it's our junker houses, the rehab houses, yeah, oh yeah, we take a closer look at those. But on, some house that somebody just bought 9 months ago and you look at the pictures and it's absolutely just gorgeous. Like we have a deal right now available in Colorado. This house was just built. It finished being built April of 2022. People said, Joe, if you give me $5 grand down, you could take over our mortgage. The house is just not even a year old yet. It's a $500,000 home. So we're able to buy a $500,000 home, guys, with 1% down, $5 grand. We cover closing costs. But I will tell you, that's going to cost us a lot more in closing costs than our $37,000 deal I'm working in Texas right now. So yeah, that's how I would
Explain that.
Cool.
All right, so let's go here,
Yeah.
and then we're gonna let Mike get into his deal he talked about last week. I want to hear where we're at with that. But the last question of the day will be from Chris. Is there a creative option for a seller who has both a mortgage and equity, and they want all the equity to put down on their next home to keep their payments lower?
I just say that I would love to be able to help you out, but I typically have no money down. And because I pay in this range and I'm covering all the closing costs and fees and I buy it as is, what's the least down you're going to need? And if they say they need all of their equity, I've got one right now. It's one that holds equity. And I explain that's not how I do it. That's putting down 20%. That doesn't make sense for me to put down 20%. So, I can make maybe some small monthly payments on top of her mortgage payment if that makes sense and it cash flows. But guys, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. And I will pass on those deals all the time. And I just follow back up with them. So because for me, monthly cash flow, because I have their payment, now I have to add a small payment on top of that. Or if they want 10, 20, 30% down, I know I'm going to get 5 to 10% down on my tenant buyer. So when they tell me they want 20% down, and I know I'm only going to get 10%, I'm on the hook for the other 10 plus all this other stuff. There's no shot. Not interested. I'm not going to make enough money on the deal. So I just gladly follow up with them. And I will ask them, because I typically buy at this price and cover all the closing costs and fees, and I buy with no money down. So how close to zero down can you get? Exactly what I ask. Every time. I sound like a robot. I say it so many damn times. I probably say in my sleep, and Jen elbows me. All
I
right,
do.
because I'm just saying it
In
all the
between
time.
your snoring. I'm just kidding.
She's gonna go, pa.
Yeah, you do. All right. So the last thing I want to throw out there too is give a little shout out to our coach. Someone asked who was our mentor. You mentioned that we did get on a call. It was every day, Fridays on Joe's day off. We would hop in the car, hire a babysitter, and we would go to work. And honestly, I'm so thankful we did because it brought us to where we're at today. But if you want to just give a quick little shout out, we should have him
Yeah,
on too.
he wants to.
Yeah.
So it's one of Ron LeGrand's approved coaches, which his name is Tony Pearl. He likes Jen and myself so much, he moved to Florida after we did. Although we have this debate all the time. He's like, you moved here because I did.
I think he was here
So
first.
technically we were here first on our Airbnb, but yeah, we always fight with him. He's such a great guy. He's so
Yeah.
awesome. He's originally from the DC area. He's got a voice that is just should be like he's made for radio, but what a heck of a guy, great teacher. And we spent a lot of money to have him.
30
sit with
minutes
us every
phone call. That was it.
30 minutes. The phone call was timed because you had to call into this thing that kept timing. So at the end of your call, guys, it just hung up. So if you didn't finish your last sentence or if you didn't keep close track of it, like once the phone clicked, the phone's dead. We'll talk next Friday. And that's all you got back then. So
You took it
really
seriously
the
though.
thing you did, you came with questions.
Mhm.
And they came with questions every single time. And we did for 6 months straight. But once again, that was the difference of us getting the 0% deals and making all these properties. We still own them from back when he was coaching. One of our first ones we bought creative. So tremendous value we saw in that. So Tony was awesome. We just saw him a couple months ago.
Yeah. All righty. Is it Beauvais? Am I saying that right? Beauvais by
Yep. Looks like it's spelled.
All right.
Hey, so I'm that kid with the little pink fishing pole that accidentally caught one. So now I'm just kind of working through it. So so I had a friend of a friend who saw on Facebook that I buy houses, and she reached out. I was
Shocking.
thinking about listing it for her, and then she saw my advertisement, and she said, "Well, why don't you just buy it?" And I was like, "What a great idea!" So originally, when I was thinking of listing it, I was thinking maybe about 150,000. And then we talked about it last week, and when we started talking about the cost, we thought we'd get it for about 110. So at 110, she thought about it, and okay, sure. After I kind of got her to agree to that, I found a house that was on the same street that had been listed a couple months ago, and I called the listing agent and the buyer's agent just to kind of get a better feel, because it's down in near Ithaca. I just don't know the area that well. And so they both told me maybe closer to 120, 140,000. Okay. So so a couple of things happened. First of all, she said she thought she had $6,000 in back tax. It turned out to be 8,100. I think so. That's $2,000. Then the price is maybe like $10,000 less than what I thought. And then both of them recommended that I get like a sulfur filtration system, because it's well water. There's like a rotten egg smell to the water. It's clean, it's great, but it's a put off.
Yep.
So I put that back into it, and I figured that was about 13,000 or something like that. That was different. So I just basically told her, like, look, I want to help you, but it doesn't make any sense. And so I got her down that 15,000 to 95. So
Nice.
So a couple of things though. So I started doing I've never really done any creative deals necessarily. I've done some private finance deals. I've bought some bank loans. I was a banker, and I'm a real estate agent now. So I think I get the numbers pretty well. I figured with the $95,000 purchase, the $8,100 in taxes, it's only about $3,000 in repairs. There's really not much to do. There was a step in the floor that they tried to floor over, so I'm going to undo that and put the step back. I'm going to put a different floor in the kitchen, nothing fancy. I'm going to rent a dumpster and I'm going to clean up it's a 0.7 acre lot. I'm just going to clean it up, make it look nice, fix the porch, make it look nice, and then paint. There's not really a lot going on. So anyway, and then the water filtration system. So that, all of that, is only maybe 103, 106, something like that. But then depending on what I do, if I have to pay commissions and closing costs and an attorney, and if I have to borrow private money, then there's points involved and everything like that. I figure if I do it that way, I'd probably be about 121, 122 all in. And when I say all in, I mean even paying a realtor, everything. Like anything above that would be profit. So I think that there's a potential in this deal for about $20,000 or $30,000. There is a house in the same town, in the same school district, almost identical, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, almost the same identical lot size and square footage, that is listed right now for 150. So I did all my numbers based on 140 just to be safe. And so I think there's at least 20 grand there. So so here's my dilemma though. I don't want to borrow that money privately if I don't have to. I don't want to have to come up with the $11,000. I have a good relationship with a private lender. He'll let me do 10% down instead of 20% down. I don't want to do all that if I don't have to. So my first question, I guess, is, does it, would I go wholesale with that? Would I go JV with that? That kind of thing. And then the other thing is, I guess, I think I might know the answer to what you would say here, but then I guess I don't have to go retail sale. I don't have to list it there. I could go rent to own there as well, right? So I guess there's a two-parter here. I don't want to come out of pocket that much if I can help it. I don't know how creative, like it. I think my numbers are very realistic. I think that this is I think there's plenty of meat on this bone. So should I just try to assign it and make a couple $5,000 and get the hell out of there? Is that the cheapest way for me to do that? Would it make more sense to see if somebody wants to partner with me and try to split 30 grand or 20 grand? So I guess I just need some guidance there. I used an MLS contract, so I assume that that's good. I also made sure to put my name and or assigns. So the contract should be assignable.
Yep. So the thing that I would look to do, me personally, this is just for what Joe would do. Doesn't mean that's what you should do or what you would do. She owns nothing on the house, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And does she need all of that cash immediately?
She has some considerable debt. She's like credit card debt and stuff. She's concerned about the taxes. She's afraid because it's been going on for a little while. She really wants to get from out under that, and she's also looking to move in / near her son in Indianapolis. So because I originally tried to go seller financing once I realized that she had 100% equity, but that was a dead end. She told me she needs all of the money.
So here's what I would do. And I know she needs all the money, but maybe she doesn't need it all this second. So me personally, what I would do is, hey, listen, I'm going to look at it, but this is Nancy. I'm looking at the margins and they're honestly still a little tight. I want to propose something to you that I think that could be a good win for both of us. So if I were to buy your house for the 95,000, my goal is I'm going to do some work to it. I'm going to put it on the market. I'm going to list it myself. I'm going to sell it pretty quickly. Okay. But to keep my overhead expenses down, I know you said you needed some of this money to pay off some old debt. This debt's been lingering around for a while, hasn't it? Yes, it has been. Of course it has. It's not new debt. It's probably been there for a while. So what's the difference of me doing that in 30 days or waiting another 90 days or more? So, because what I'm going to try to do, to be honest with you, I'm going to try to buy the house with just 10 grand down now. So I'll pay 95. I'll give you 10 grand at closing. And then I'm going to give you the other 85 grand once I get this house sold in a few more months.
Okay.
So now I come up with, well, and there's a reason why I'm saying this now is because if I come up with say 10 grand, handful of thousand more in closing costs, I come up with the back taxes, the filtration system. I'm looking at probably doing what, $30,000, which is probably a whole lot cheaper to borrow than 120 grand.
Mm. Okay.
And it's a lot less exposure, because now what's my cash on cash return if I'm borrowing 30 grand on that deal versus 120? My cash on cash return goes up a lot too, because I only have 30 grand exposed. So listen, Nancy, I'll give you 10 grand at closing. I'm going to get this place cleaned out right away. I'm painting this, I'm fixing this, I'm going to do all the stuff, and I'm going to list it myself. I'm going to price it right so we get it sold quickly. And then once I do, I'm going to make a tiny bit of something, but I'm also going to get you the rest of your balance too.
Okay.
And then to be quite honest with you, would I even pay a little bit more for the house? What if I pay 97 to do that? I'm going to throw an extra 2 grand in your pocket to help, right? But sometimes they might do with no money down. I've done lots of those deals before where I'm covering closing costs, give them 2 grand to move out, and then I'm listing that house on the market right away, selling it, and then getting them cash out on their balance, and I make something too.
Yeah. So I love that. And I think we talked a little bit about that, and it's probably a skill difference. But I did originally start there, and I just, for whatever reason, wasn't able to negotiate that. So I mean, I could certainly come back to it, but at the time, I mean, she was saying that she needed like at least 30 or 40,000 off the jump. And so when
Yeah,
she
but
said that, that's when I said, okay, well then I think I'd just go the whole route.
so when they tell me that, I say, what do you need that for? Are you using it to buy your next house? But she's like, no, I want to pay off some credit cards, and I want to take the family out to Red Lobster, and you know what I mean? Like, you don't know what they're going to do with that. So
Yeah.
that's why I asked, like, are you using that 30 grand to go buy is that what you're using for the next house, or what did you have planned for that? So she gives me the reason what she's going to use it for. I get into how I could help, because honestly, it's negotiating too. So here, how about this? And I'd even maybe have the conversation with her again and say, hey, I talked to one of my partners today on this deal, because I'm looking to partner up with a couple of my investor buddies. And one of my partners proposed that we could do this, Nancy. So I just want to run something by you real quick, but what he's proposing we do, because we have a little bit of work to do here, and we're still paying top dollar for your house. We really are. So if we're going to do this, he was proposing, what if we were to buy your house for the 95 grand, and then we give you $10,000 at closing. I paint it, we clean it all out, because the worst thing she's going to say is no.
Sure.
But the best thing she could say is, okay, do 15 grand, you got yourself a deal. Right. So that's something I might want to look at, just so I have that idea.
Okay. So basically what you're saying then is I'm going to say, hey, listen, I'm still going to buy it for 95,000, but instead of me giving you all of that on March 31st or whatever, I'm going to give you 10,000 on March 31st. I'm going to do everything in my power, and maybe even, I mean, certainly I wouldn't volunteer this, but certainly you could put some time frame on that, right? Like, hey, I'm going to get this thing, and within 90 days from then, I should be able to get this thing sold or whatever, and get you cashed out.
Yeah, and what I would do is and this is where I'm going to want to say to her is to even sweeten, maybe we could even partner together on the deal. So listen to this phrase, the next one. Maybe, Nancy, we could even partner together on the deal, and I give you a couple $1,000s extra for the property.
Okay. Okay, like, hey,
Right.
I'm gonna have to borrow this money, so why don't I borrow it from you and make it worth your while? Something like that, right?
I almost just say, no, I love the phrase, why don't we just partner together
Oh,
on the
yeah,
deal?
yeah, sure.
Because then she might feel more she's inside of it. So where I kind of get into it for me, and it's just a preference thing. I'm not an expert as far as like the psychology behind the wording, but I think of it is when I say, hey, why don't we partner on this together? I'll pay you a few $1,000s more for the house. We'll both get cash out at the same exact time. And I'm going to tell her my goal. So my goal is to buy your property, get in there as fast as I can, get it cleaned up, and I'm going to list it right away. And then that's when I want out. So here's the thing. If we partner on this together, I could pay you a couple grand more for your house. I'll still give you a check at closing for say $10,000 for now. And then when we cashed out, we both get cashed out at the same time. So I'm going to make sure we get it done as fast as possible.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And if we partner together on the deal, that means I pay 97 for the house.
Okay, come back to it,
And I'm gonna
right?
put a couple extra thousand, yeah, I'll put a couple extra thousand in your pocket for, doing this.
Right, yeah, right. So like, for example, you're saying something like, well, since you're doing this for me, or to make up for your time or something. Okay. Um,
I even
interesting.
say just for doing this, right? Just for doing this,
Okay.
I'll pay a couple extra grand for the house, put a little extra money in your pocket. You're still gonna pay off your other stuff too, and we're in this together. So the minute you get cashed out, I do too, and we both high five each other. And I'm gonna get done as fast as we can.
Okay, right, because I don't make any money anyway until, right, okay, that's interesting. Okay,
Right.
very cool.
Hmm.
Cool. All right. Uh,
So
that's much more
I
creative.
will
Okay.
say, well, and it's just making them understand that you guys are in it together. She's not out on your own. You're
Right.
not on
So,
your
but then
own.
when you borrow that money, are you still borrowing that from a private lender who's still gonna have a lien on the property, or is now you trying to find it somewhere else, or what would you typically do there?
Yeah, you could find a private money if you want. If you don't have the funds, borrow from somebody, pay a little bit of interest on it, cash them out too.
Mm,
Right. So what are you in the deal for? You're in it for nothing. You didn't
right.
take any dollars out of your pocket. Right. Because I think on that deal, if it's too skinny to wholesale it, or you could do a novation agreement.
And what is that?
So a novation agreement means it's an agreement for you to write it up as a wholesale deal that you're going to be buying the house from her as is, but you're going to be bringing it to the market and you're going to be listing it with a realtor, which would be yourself. And when you bring it there, you're going to be not selling it as is. So any of these repairs that need to get done, you might either fix them ahead of time or you might fix them after the inspection goes through. So this is the way that you don't have to do a double closing on it, because you got to think about it the way we're talking about buying it. You buy it, you're closing on it once, now you own it, and you have to sell it again. You have to pay closing costs twice, buying and
Right.
selling. So a novation agreement is getting agreement between the seller and the agreement says that you're going to be able to buy it from them for 95,000 as is. Basically what it is, it's a partnership agreement and the same type of thing, to where now you're going to back the house. And if there's an inspection done, they say, oh, you need to fix the railing, the paint's chipping, you need to do this. And you look at the bill, it's $4,000. You're going to be the one that comes up to the money and fix all that, not her. And that you're going to be able to sell directly on the MLS.
Okay, so basically I'm cashing her out when I sell is the idea?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So she doesn't get any money till when she leaves. But you're going to facilitate the whole thing for her. But the difference is not just selling it, listing it for her, because if you were to sell the property as is, and there's an FHA inspection goes through and they said there's 5 things that need to get fixed, the difference is this novation agreement means that you're paying for that, not her.
I see. Okay.
So if you were to sell the house on the market as is, and it goes to FHA, usually you have 2 choices. Either the buyer's going to fix it or the seller's going to fix it. And this agreement says that you're going to fix it and that the new buyer, however, you can still pass on that to the new buyer too. Not
Okay.
saying that you can't. I've had many of those
Right.
instances.
She's not, it doesn't matter if I do it or not. It's that she's not responsible for it, right? You don't have to go home,
Correct.
but you get the hell out of here.
Correct. Yep, we've sold a couple of houses the same way. I've got one of ours right now in Cattaraugus County. We did they moved in now and they're fixing all of the things first before the inspection will go through for the mortgage. So we're looking to close now probably April, by the time everything's finally done with this thing.
Okay. All right.
I know.
Okay. I love it. I love it. It's, I just want to keep my credibility. Like, I don't want to keep going back to her, and I'm just, and maybe it's just in my own head, but I just don't want her to feel like, oh, we keep making these agreements and then you keep going back and changing the terms on me.
Right. Or what you can do is, once again, I would even look to wholesale it then, because if you're going to make, and I'll give you another example, say you make 5, 7, 8 grand, 10 grand, 5 to 10 grand wholesaling it. Say it's a skinny deal, 5 grand. Would you have made that if you listed it as is? Right. Because she doesn't want to go through all that. If you made 5 grand assignment fee for giving somebody a good deal where they got into the deal too, right? You didn't have to do any of the cleaning out. You didn't have to list it on the market, facilitate all the other stuff. So there is value there too. So that is something where, if it has the value and that fits the equation, maybe you see if there's a buyer who would want it in that area.
Right. Now, would you consider it all? Like, I know you've talked about before getting a tenant buyer in there and then maybe just using their down payment to pay her or something like that. Is that feasible in this scenario?
Not for this one because she needs all of her cash. She needs to
I
get
see.
cashed out.
Right.
My tenant buyer would only be renting it and
Oh,
getting her
right. You
cashed
only
out
get like
years down the
15
road.
maybe if you're lucky or whatever, 20 or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So either for her, I'm either going to figure out if she would want to partner in the deal. Just I'd call her up and say, "Hey, listen, Gina, I got to think and talk to one of my partners about a deal, and I actually got a way that I could put a little more money in your pocket if you're interested in."
Right. I love the partner thing because, I think I did build some good rapport there. And I also love the idea that, hey, if we could work this out, it would save me some money and I would just be willing to pass that right along to you.
Well, yeah, I think I could actually because every time you call her, you're going to get a lower price. You're actually going to call her back to give her a higher number. So,
Right.
hey, I got a way that I've been thinking with my partner that I could put a little bit more extra money in your pocket. Do you want to hear about it?
Right. And then, all she could, I mean, I have a signed contract, which I
No, I
almost,
don't want to hear, Mike. I don't want to
right,
hear how you can pay me
right.
more for my house. That sounds terrible.
How
Right?
I hate putting extra money in my pocket. God darn it.
Right.
Yeah.
So and then you just run the scenario by her and just say, I was just talking to one of my real estate buddies who we partner on a lot of deals. And this is something that we were just chatting about. And you know what? Thinking about this could be actually a little bit better of a win for you too. You'll put a little bit more money in your pocket by doing this method and just
Right. I'm still taking care of the taxes, right?
yeah.
I'm still handling the repairs and managing the people, and you still don't have to take your old dogs and get them out every time somebody wants to view the property and all
You're
those
free
other
to
things.
leave
I'm
and get a
still
little bit of
with
money
all
in
of that
closing.
shit. What's that?
You
Yeah.
can get a little bit of money at closing. You're free to go. And then we're in it together. We're partnered together in this deal. And my goal is to get it cashed out as soon as possible so we both get paid.
Right. And I know you have some credit card bills, but right. I mean, they're still going to be there in a month, right? Right. So
They're not going to forget about her. We promise.
okay. So go back, try to frame that in a way that well, not even frame it. I mean, I don't, I think that it really could help her, but just kind of highlight how that could help her. And then see if we can do that. And then if not, just start
Sure.
marketing her and getting somebody in there who wants to come up with the cash.
Or I would talk to any of those other realtors you talked to earlier, say, hey, does anybody want to do this deal off market who's got cash in the area?
Right. And actually I've been listening, Joe. I've been listening. I asked both of them if they had a buyer, right here at that, and neither of them did. But I do like that
I'd
idea.
ask
I
them,
mean,
how
there's
about
no
around
reason why I
100?
couldn't call every realtor in Ithaca and ask them if they had a buyer, right? I mean, there's nothing stopping me
Yep.
from doing that either. So,
Yep. I got a situation I'm coming across right now you might be interested in.
okay. Me or
Get
you
a hell
wouldn't
of a
say
deal
that
for
to
one.
me?
That's what I would say to them. Say,
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
I got a
I was
hell
like,
of
I'm
a deal.
listening. What's
You
going on?
got exactly. It's good, isn't it? See, it
Hey.
works. But that's the point.
Hey, listen, I want to be respectful of your time, so I'm going to let you go. But did you have any multiple unit properties when you were unloading your rentals or converting them to rent to owns?
Mm-mm. We did with single family homes, but we have had a lot of our students make deals. One of our girls, our student, she lives right in Rochester. Her first deal was a 12 unit in Geneva. She got on terms or cash.
I mean, for me to kind of get out of the landlord business, like, is there a way to rent to own or lease option on these multis?
Sure, if you got somebody who's got a double or something like that, and they want a house hack,
Sure.
they rent one
Or even
half,
like an
live in the
investor or
other half.
something. I'm trying to think of like a hungry young investor who might want to jump in there or
Mhm.
something. I don't know.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. That's
So
interesting.
Yeah.
that's we typically like the single family homes. It's a little bit easier to do. Somebody wants to live in there and own it. But you might find
Sure.
somebody who will rent out one half and they'll live in the other half, and then it pays for their expenses or
And I
a
was going to
portion
say,
of their
Mike,
expenses, and they manage it.
well, we would get a ton of inquiries on that when we were, going real hard and putting the signs all around Rochester. I'd get tons of calls asking, like, do you have a 2-family or a multi? Like, I really want to get into this, but I don't have the credit. I don't have a ton of money, but I do have enough for this. So I had like people definitely reaching out. So I think there's a market for it for sure.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I was, I'm rich dad, poor dad disciple like everybody else. I was going for cash flow, which, the multis are great for that. But there is something about we've since added a couple of singles, and they're a heck of a lot easier to work with. Because
Oh, yeah,
every person who's ever
absolutely.
lived in a duplex hates their neighbor. So
Every time.
Not your problem
And
if
that-
you're just lease optioning it, right?
right. Right. Cool.
Yeah, we love it.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I know your time is very valuable. So
Awesome. Well, I
No
will
problem.
see you and the rest of you on Thursday night because they are
Thursday
part of
night.
our 3-month program. And if you are still listening and you want more info on that, guys, that price goes up March 15th. And I'm only saying it because there's 2 more lives left and that's it. And you could still get in at this promo price and join us and go even deeper with all the module questions. We're having so much fun. So I'm really looking forward to it. If you have any questions, hit me up. You know where to find me: Facebook, Instagram, creativefinanceplaybook.com. Thanks for staying for 2 hours. Oh my goodness.
We're crushing it today. So guys, and if you want to learn more about this too, you can set up a one-on-one with Jen, sit down with her. She can go over all the details, but I will tell you it is awesome. And, I look forward to more of these conversations like Mike and the team on during our private small group too, where we're diving into all the same kind of stuff. So definitely you do not want to miss out on that. So great seeing you all guys here. Thank you for sticking for 2 hours. You guys are the
Rock
real deal
stars.
this week.
I see you,
And I'm glad
Julie
we
and
could be
Lou
here.
and Melissa, Wendy, all the people. So have a great evening,
Yep.
and we will see you again next Tuesday. We'll be with Park Daddy, the mobile home investor. So excited.
And guys, you do not want to miss this. He is amazing. So I'm
right.
super looking forward to it myself. All right,
All
guys. We'll see you
righty.
next week.
Bye-bye.
All right.